Hi, everyone. Welcome to Spill the Tea Radio, where we interview awesome singers, songwriters, and those who influence their lives. Spill the Tea Radio explores the journey, creativity, and inspiration behind the songs. My next guest is an Indigenous advocate, facilitator, radio DJ, songwriter, and performer from Chippewas of the Thames First Nation. He uses hip hop and music as powerful tools to share stories and elevate Indigenous perspectives. Through his work on and off the airwaves, he creates space for truth, expression, and connection, bringing attention to the voices and experiences that too often go unheard. So, let's spill the tea with Bigg Zee. Welcome, Bigg Zee.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
I just
Miigwech,
realized.
miigwech.
I just realized your name and our show rhyme. Spill the tea with Bigg Zee.
Hey, it's perfect. That's the intro right there.
That's the intro, right? We could have done that intro and stopped right there.
I love it.
Bigg Zee, you come from a musical family. You've got a couple of brothers. You're the baby of the family.
Yes.
How did your family influence your music?
Well, they always listened to it growing up, and it went from country and folk to a lot of rock and roll. Just hearing my parents listening to it, and then I had a few cousins that were into the rock bands, played a lot of guitar, things like that, and then a few rappers on the way. And my one rapper cousin, he made it even farther. He had a group out in Toronto. He was the first one to do shows, but for me personally, those were always just there. I never really picked it up until I found it on my own. I did have a cousin that wanted to rap, but he kind of fell in the other lanes. He didn't really want to do it anymore, and it was just something that stuck with me since I was young. I think we started writing, I was like 10. And uh, gradually over the years, I just kept writing on my own, and I started to get better. And then it started becoming my therapy,
Hmm.
all the things that I couldn't necessarily talk about or say out loud, I just wrote it there, and it helped me channel that energy in a positive way, you could say.
Bigg Zee, I had this conversation with another white rapper. And we think about hip hop music and rap music being more from, the black culture or the Caribbean islands. And I asked him, who was of Scottish descent, how he was accepted into the hip hop culture, be not being a black rapper. So I'll ask you the same question because you are from First Nations. So that's another area where in the I'll say in the mainstream of hip hop and rap, we don't expect to have hip hop artists and rap artists come from First Nations, or we don't expect them to come from from white guys that have ginger hair.
Right.
So even accept Eminem. Okay, we'll give Eminem the props on that.
He's definitely
So
an anomaly.
So how are you accepted, or how did you get accepted into the hip hop world when you are more or less an anomaly at this particular stage of that genre?
So based just off looks, I'm more of a white passing in per se, I do tan in the summer, but as you can see, I'm a lighter skinned fella. But like off of first looks, I enjoyed that. Nobody ever really expected me to have the music that I have, that the stories that I had. But the more like I got into it, I've been to the States, I've talked to people, I've been around Toronto a lot of my life, and like anywhere that like I've talked to people in the game that are either from the island or African descent, it kind of just went hand in hand. We seen the same oppressions that happened to my people and it happened to theirs, and they started realizing that like at, at the end of the day, like the hip hop genre is the ballot for the oppressed,
Hmm.
and off of looks alone, um, it wasn't really accepted thing, which I enjoyed because I like giving out surprises. Um, But then when people actually heard my story, heard the things I had to say, understood where I came from, they realized that it wasn't much different. I talked to people from Brooklyn and the Bronx, when I was out in LA, hanging around Pico. Um, there was like every time they tried to explain the neighborhood and the block, it was almost correlations to the reserve and the things that we go through there. Um, and especially a lot of the stories that I tell, they were all things that can relate all the way out there. I have a friend of mine who played one of my songs, Lean on Me, and he does like facilitating camps, something I've been involved with hip hop. And he did one for prison reform out in Ghana.
Mm.
And these Ghana prisoners were like they were like into it. They were fully immersed. They loved the song. They loved the music that I was creating. And I don't know much about Ghana. I've never been there, never traveled out there. The farthest I've traveled is the States. I haven't gone past North America.
Mm.
So to hear that people are relating to it out there just kind of gives a perspective of like colonization and oppression is on every part of the world. And it doesn't really matter who's telling it. If the story is real, then it's going to correlate to the people that feel it.
I would imagine that some people look at you and say, "You're a young guy. You've you've you have all the opportunities available to you. You move back and forth between your First Nations community and London, Ontario, where you live. London, Ontario is known as a an affluent area. It might look at you and say, what kind of problems could you possibly have? What kind of feelings would cause you to feel oppressed or to be hard done by? How do you respond to that?
Um, I'd say they're probably sheltered or they're not looking out their front window. Um, they're from systematic racism to just walking down the street and getting talked to by cops for having braids in my hair. It's something that I've had to go through my entire life, and it's gotten to the point where there's a lot of my community that is involved in drugs, and the MMIW movement is going on because there's a lot of women in the community that got sold into the trades, and is a lot of heavy things that happen in my community and to my people that people don't even acknowledge.
Hmm.
So for them to say that there's nothing going on, well, all you got to do is look at your screen. Everybody has a computer, everybody has a phone, and if you don't see what's going on, then you're just ignoring it.
Hmm.
Which to me, that's why I do music. That's why I do it the way I do, because it's a way for me to show off that voice and say it raw. People might not always like what I have to say, but they gotta respect it because I'm the only one saying it. And I'm not sugarcoating it. I'm not saying it as an activist. I'm not saying it as I'm the big hard gangster. I'm not saying this as I'm saying it as these are my stories. This is the stuff that happened to me, my family, the people around me, the things that I've seen. Take it how you want to.
Now, Big Lou, your friend and one of our previous guests on the show, he talks about his hip hop experience, and he comes from the islands. When I talk to a young artists and we talk about the challenges that they have, you've gone into a profession that is just full of challenges to begin with. Never mind bringing any of the other issues, challenges, whatever you want to call it, into the mix. So, what are the challenges that you face as a young, non-dark skinned rapper trying to make a name for yourself in in an industry that is stacked against you to begin with?
Well, I wouldn't say it's like a challenge to me. It's just something I didn't never necessarily understood was why we had our own Juno Awards. Like there's an Indigenous category, and you'll see hip hop artists there, singers there, traditional singers there, which don't get me wrong, I love that my people are getting acknowledged in that way per se, but I never understood the fact of why we didn't get acknowledged just as us. I'm not just a native. I'm not just my skin. I'm an artist. I'm a hip hop artist. You know, that's something that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way because why do we need to be considered that? Why can I only be in that category to be acknowledged?
Hmm.
I should be acknowledged for the talent that I have. Um, which over the years it's slowly changing. And I've met a lot of the community around Ontario, on the reserves out here. There's a big hip hop scene. Like out in Brantford, they got Jukasa. They've had some of the biggest rap and rock and roll artists in the world come out to the res to
Hmm.
go record there. So music has just been influenced by Indigenous for time. It's just people don't even recognize it. And right now, I don't know. I don't really look at it as a challenge to me. I look at it I look at it as something that excites me. You know, it's like, oh, sweet, I get to be the one to kick open the door. Perfect. That's my time. It's here for me. And you know, if I gotta be that person, I don't look at it as a challenge. I look at it as an opportunity.
You bring up a very, very good point about the Junos, and I'm sure that the people that were running the Junos at the time, when they brought out that category, that specific category for Indigenous artists, and I often wonder myself, like I'm not a young guy. I'm not your age. I'm quite a bit older.
You still got some years in you. Come
I still
on,
got,
give yourself some credit. Come on.
yeah, I'm still kicking. I'm still kicking. But I've often wondered that myself is what when we give those labels,
Mhm.
when we give indigenous artists as part of the Junos, isn't that creating the very thing that we're trying to not have, which is separation? We want to
Right,
be one people. We want to have everybody, to come together, especially in the art form. I
right.
mean, an artist is an artist is an artist. It doesn't matter, what color skin you have or what your origins are. So it's refreshing to hear a young artist say, you know what, I I really I maybe I challenge that. Do you think it's time that maybe that category went away and everybody is just treated as one?
See, I love that there's acknowledgement, but I don't feel like it should be segregated acknowledgement because then and it's not taking credit away from the winners there. You know,
Mhm.
I know about like Sebastian Gaskin, that's one of my favorite singers right now. But like for example, this year, Snotty Nose Red's Kids were the first Indigenous artists to get a hip hop album award outside of the Indigenous awards. An amazing accomplishment. That's a phenomenal thing to see. But why did it take all the way to 2015 for that?
Right.
Why were we never acknowledged before that? Like otherwise, you know, it just kind of felt like they were filling a box in, you know, hitting the check mark on reconciliation, which again, you're right. It's kind of it's not feeling how it's supposed to be because you
Mhm.
know I do a lot of the groundwork and try and be an activist for my people too, and when I set up my own events and talk to these companies, I've talked to politicians and people in cities, and a lot of the time you'll get the yes, we'll fill in the box, we'll do this for you, and there's no actual change. As long as they put their name on it, they think they've done something and then left all the groundwork for the people like us to do.
Big Z, the song we're about to hear has some lyrics in it that people might misinterpret, and I think I just heard a little piece on the song Louie Louie, and where the everybody had the impression that there were all kinds of nasty things in there and some bad language for the radio, especially. And it turns out that the singer, he had sang so hard the night before when he went into the studio, he was hoarse, and so that's why the words didn't come out.
Yep.
So as our listeners are listening to this song, they're going to hear a line in the song, but the real words are "fork it up." So I know that's going to intrigue them now, Big Z. Everybody's going to be listening to, for those lyrics. But just give us just a right around that part of the song. What's that part of the song about where you say "fork it up"?
So again, that was me kind of showing off the rap skills. It was a lot of wordplay. It only connects when you hear the whole bar of the song. So it's fork it up, uh, nah, fork it up. Held the trident from the river where we play with water like Poseidon. You can see the scope like a kaleido. Now it's basically like I'm from the river, Thames River, around that area. And I'm from a neighborhood that, you see a lot of drug addiction and people selling and doing whatever. They're all involved in that situation, but you would never really recognize it. You would never expect it from a little London city or from
Mhm.
out here like that. So that was kind of my play on that of you can't see the scope like a kaleido. They may have these things going on, dangerous people and dangerous situations, but you wouldn't even recognize it. Um, so it's not a swear word, but it is a play on some darker realities that I'm living in. Um,
Exactly.
and and that was the beauty of this song. Ethan was like the day, I was like the night. We kind of had a good mix there.
Well, let's get into one of the songs that Bigg Zee wrote. This song was co written with Ethan Mack. It was released in March of 2025 and recorded in Ethan's studio in Stratford, Ontario. Let's take a listen to singer songwriter Bigg Zee and his song 10T.
Look what I found as I'm rolling through this vacant town. You come around, cause you tell me that you'd like to hear my voice again. I've got a couple things to do before the hearse. I'm just trying to get up off this earth. It's like my body calling out for something more than turf. I need to keep it real and feel immersed. That's when the key emerged. What you talking about when you saying my name in dreams? What you talking about when you say what you really mean? So break it down for me, and now I feel serene. Cause what you want is what I really need, yeah. Look what I found as I'm rolling through this vacant town. You come around, cause you tell me that you wanna hear my voice again. You like the sounds, and you like to feel the beat, yeah, yeah. You said you wanna move it for me, well I tell my story.
Time to clock in on something that is timeless. Finally open, didn't know that I was hiding. It's the first step when the worlds start colliding. Work hard, play hard, live hard. Is it worth it? Can you describe it? Took the time to define, is it working? Swallow my pride to provide a real purpose. Working on verses to show my service. Business cards held by the lowest earners, but my earnings are multiplying. When the way I used to make it, it was death-defying. Fork it up, held the trident. From the river where they play with water like Poseidon. You can't see the scope like a kaleido. Strongest creature alive, like I'm Kaido. Calls collecting every month like Fido. Cutting off the working man like Hydro. Nuclear bombs are red buttons on my iPhone.
Look what I found as I'm rolling through this vacant town. You come around, cause you tell me that you wanna hear my voice again. You like the sounds, and you like to feel the beat, yeah. You said you wanna move it for me, well I tell my story. Well I tell my story. Well I tell my story. Gotta keep it gentle. Said you wanna move it for me.
That was 10T by Bigg Zee. Bigg Zee, tell us, what is that song about and what was the inspiration to write it?
Well, the inspiration, it really was just based on like how the whole tape was correlated. Me and Ethan Mack, we met off a whim, our energy connected, and it was like that. Our names connected, Big Mac, it just made sense. And then when we started writing together, it was the energy that we felt. And it wasn't necessarily like something that sorry, let's go on there. It wasn't necessarily something that was planned, but because our energies combined so much, it created something, a good vibe, a good energy, and that's what we wanted to come across with that, standing tall together with your brothers, with your people, with your friends, with your family. It's just a good song to listen to.
How do people find out more about you and your music? What's the website, socials, and streaming platforms?
Well, look me up on Spotify, Apple Music, all streaming platforms at BIGGZEE. You can look me up on Instagram at Biggest Zed, Facebook at Bigg Zee, spelled the same way. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Um, right now, I think that's the latest tape that I've been involved in. Hoping to drop a album either at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. I'm just working through doing a lot of events. I got my summer booked up with shows, so fingers crossed it goes well, I'm excited.
We have been in conversation with Bigg Zee. Bigg Zee, thanks for being with us, and good luck with the summer.
I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Something that is timeless. Finally opened.